There are moments when power isn't about titles or words. It's in the way someone looks at you, the silent seconds you wait, and the feeling of being unseen. Vivian Carter, the CEO of a financial consulting firm, walked into Highland Crest Bank in Houston expecting professionalism. Instead, she found herself ignored and made to wait for nearly 2 hours. Vivian's story isn't just about waiting for a meeting, it's about what it means to be treated as invisible because of who you are. She had a scheduled appointment with Marcus Kramer, the branch manager. But despite arriving early and prepared, she was left sitting alone in a cold, fancy lobby, while others, people who came in later or even without appointments, were given priority and special treatment. The bank's lobby was impressive and designed to impress with crystal chandeliers, leather benches, and polished stone floors. But the atmosphere was chilly, with an unspoken rule that not everyone truly belonged. Vivian noticed the polite smiles and the hurried steps of staff serving favored clients with ease. Melissa Stone, the receptionist, gave Vivian a cool, distant greeting. There was no warmth, no offer of water, no real welcome. Vivian was just another name on a screen, and the attitude said, "You don't quite fit here." Minutes ticked by. The clock seemed to move slower. The air felt colder. Vivian held on to her calm, reminding herself she was no stranger to being overlooked. But this time, she made a decision. She would not let this silence shrink her. Others came and went, well-dressed men and women who were greeted with smiles and escorted straight in. A blonde woman with a designer bag breezed through without waiting. 2 young men joked with the receptionist as if they owned the place. Meanwhile, Vivian sat and waited, her presence barely acknowledged. She glanced at her watch. 10:45 a.m. She had arrived early, as she always did, knowing in places like this every minute counted. But still, no one called her name. The waiting grew heavier, the feeling of invisibility more intense. Eventually, she approached the receptionist politely, asking if Marcus Kramer had been informed she was still waiting. Melissa barely looked up, her voice clipped. "He's in a meeting." "You'll see him soon." No estimate, no apology. Vivian's heart sank, but she stayed composed. She asked again for a clearer idea of how long the wait might be. Melissa's shrug was dismissive. "I'm not sure. It shouldn't be long." Those words felt like a slap, casual, careless, and cold. This wasn't about simple scheduling. Vivian understood the system was set up to favor certain clients. It wasn't personal. It was the way power worked here. Politeness wasn't kindness. It was a way to keep her waiting, quiet and invisible. Still, Vivian refused to be a victim. She decided this silence would not define her. She would speak up. Her resolve grew as the minutes dragged on. The lobby was nearly empty now except for her. Others had been let in or finished their business. She could hear quiet conversations, laughter, deals being made. All around her, but not for her. Her mind went back to earlier moments, the dismissive glance from Melissa, the easy access others received, the invisible barrier between her and the respect she deserved. But she wasn't invisible. Not anymore. The clock showed 11 a.m., 1 hour since her appointment time. And still, no one had come to get her. Her legs felt stiff, but she sat upright, hands clutching her leather handbag. Each passing minute weighed heavier on her dignity. But she knew that if she showed weakness, they would only treat her with less respect. Outside the glass windows, the sun poured bright and warm over Houston's streets, full of life and motion. Inside, the bank's cold marble floors and muted voices painted a different picture, one where Vivian was the outsider. The contrast was painful. She remembered her mother's words from childhood in rural Texas. "If you want respect, you'll have to work twice as hard and show 10 times the courage." Vivian had lived by those words all her life. She looked around and saw the people who belonged here, men in crisp suits, women carrying designer bags, clients welcomed with smiles and quick escorts. Each of them held unspoken membership to this club. Vivian's presence was tolerated, but never truly accepted. Her phone vibrated. She glanced at it, but there was no message from the bank. No update, just silence. She inhaled deeply and whispered to herself, "I am not invisible." her gaze fixed on the hallway where the branch manager's office lay behind frosted glass doors. For the past hour, those doors remained closed to her. The waiting was more than time. It was a test of her patience, her resolve, and her self-worth. But Vivian had decided long ago she wouldn't back down. Not today. And then she made up her mind. She would no longer wait quietly. It was time to face the system head-on. Time to be seen, heard, and respected. The silence around her would be broken. Vivian stood up, smoothing her blazer, and took a steady breath. She walked toward the reception desk again, her heels clicking softly but firmly on the polished marble floor. This time, her voice held quiet strength as she said, "Excuse me, has Mr. Marcus Kramer been informed that I am still waiting?" Melissa Stone, the receptionist, glanced up from her computer with a look that mixed surprise and annoyance. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, then she gave a clipped answer. "He's in a meeting. You'll see him shortly." No smile, no warmth. Just the same cold tone that had greeted Vivian since she arrived. "Could you please tell me how much longer I might wait?" Vivian pressed. She wasn't asking for favors, only for fairness. Melissa's eyes flicked back to the screen, and with a dismissive shrug, she said, "I'm not sure. It shouldn't be long." Vivian felt the words land like a cold wave, but she didn't show it. She nodded, thanked her, and turned back to her seat by the large window. The early summer sunlight cast long shadows across the floor, but inside, the chill felt deeper. Minutes passed. The lobby grew quieter. Most of the clients who had arrived after Vivian were already gone, their business completed or meetings finished. Yet here she sat, alone and invisible to those who mattered. She watched as a sharply dressed middle-aged man in a gray suit was greeted warmly by Melissa and quickly escorted inside. Then a blonde woman in a designer dress appeared, Prada bag in hand. She was met with smiles and no questions about appointments or waiting. A group of young men breezed past the desk, joking with the receptionist as if they were regulars. Each time, Vivian's heart sank a little more. The system was clear. Some people belonged here and others did not. Her mind drifted to memories of other times she had been sidelined because of the color of her skin. She remembered the polite smiles that barely hid judgment, the subtle looks that said, "You don't quite fit." But today, surrounded by opulence and privilege, the message felt louder and more painful. Vivian's grip tightened on her handbag. She reminded herself she was not here to beg. She was here because she deserved respect and equality. This was her business, her hard work, her appointment. The weight of waiting, of being passed over and ignored, was exhausting. But she refused to let it break her. Each minute that ticked by strengthened her resolve. Then, the sound of footsteps echoed again. This time, the confident click of heels. A woman entered the lobby, golden-haired and radiant, dressed in a navy velvet sheath dress and carrying a cream Chanel bag. The receptionist's demeanor changed immediately. Melissa's voice brightened. "Good morning, Mrs. Lancaster," she said warmly, as if greeting a star. Vivian's chest tightened. Barbara Lancaster did not have an appointment, yet she was treated like royalty. A young staffer appeared and escorted Mrs. Lancaster to the boardroom without delay. No waiting, no questions, just instant access. Melissa returned to her usual cold self as soon as Mrs. Lancaster disappeared behind the frosted doors. Vivian's eyes followed the scene, feeling the sting of unfairness burn deep. Her mind raced. Why was the system so different for some? Why was she made to wait so long while others were ushered in like honored guests? The answer was painful and obvious. It wasn't about schedules or meetings. It was about belonging, about who the bank chose to recognize as important. But Vivian was more than a client. She was a CEO. She had built her company from the ground up. She had earned her place at the table, and she was not going to be pushed to the sidelines any longer. The silence in the lobby was heavy now, almost suffocating. Vivian knew that speaking up could change everything, but it also meant risking confrontation, judgment, or even rejection. Her heart pounded as she stood again, determined to claim the respect she was owed. She would face the branch manager, Marcus Kramer, directly. She would not wait for permission. She would not be silenced. She walked to the frosted glass door at the end of the hall. Her hand hovered over the handle, then she knocked. Not too hard, not too soft. It was the sound of someone who knew she belonged. Inside, Marcus Kramer looked up from his desk, surprise and irritation crossing his face. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially by someone he'd tried to sideline. But Vivian met his gaze calmly and confidently. "I've been waiting over an hour and a half for this meeting," she said firmly. "I believe I deserve the same respect as anyone else with an appointment." Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his chair. He glanced at his schedule, then tried to offer excuses about busy days and VIP clients. But Vivian cut him off, her voice steady. "I've seen others come in after me without appointments and receive special treatment. Why is that?" Marcus swallowed hard, the weight of the question settling in the room. The polite veneer cracked. For the first time, he seemed unsure, struggling to defend a system that clearly favored some over others. Vivian stood tall. She wasn't here to beg or complain. She was here to demand fairness. Their conversation was more than a business meeting. It was a test of power, of recognition, and of truth. Outside the office, the sun continued to shine bright. Inside, two worlds collided, one of privilege and exclusion, and one of courage and determination. Vivian knew that this moment could change everything, not just for her, but for anyone who had ever been made to wait, overlooked, or dismissed. She was ready. The air in the room felt heavy as Marcus Kramer leaned back, trying to regain control. His polished navy suit and calm demeanor couldn't hide the discomfort flickering in his eyes. Vivian held her ground, her gaze steady and unwavering. She wasn't here to negotiate politeness. She was here to expose a system that had treated her unfairly. Marcus cleared his throat, voice smooth but strained. "Miss Carter, I understand your frustration, but we follow strict protocols. Priority clients, urgent cases, and special directives from headquarters sometimes require flexibility. It's nothing personal." Vivian's eyes narrowed slightly, sensing the excuses behind his words. "Flexibility?" she repeated, her tone calm but firm. "Is that the word you use when people like me wait over an hour and a half, while others without appointments are brought straight in? That flexibility feels like exclusion." Marcus shifted in his chair, clearly rattled. "It's about managing resources efficiently. We can't accommodate everyone immediately." Vivian shook her head. "But I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for what any client deserves: respect, fairness, and the chance to be heard without being sidelined." The room fell silent. The only sound was the faint hum of the air conditioner and the distant click of heels from the lobby. Marcus stared at his desk, fingers tapping nervously. Vivian could see the cracks forming in his practiced calm. She continued, "This isn't just about me. It's about every person who walks through those doors and is made to wait or feel invisible because they don't fit a certain profile. The system you represent hides behind polite words and procedures, but the reality is clear. Some people belong here and others don't." Marcus swallowed hard, his eyes darting toward the frosted glass door. He seemed trapped between defending the institution and facing its flaws. Vivian's words had struck a nerve. "You say there's no discrimination here," she pressed. "But how can that be true when policies are bent only for certain clients? When polite neglect is a daily barrier for others?" Marcus's face darkened. "There must be some misunderstanding." Vivian's voice sharpened. "No misunderstanding. I've seen it firsthand. And I'm here to say enough. This silence, this polite exclusion, it ends now." For a moment, the two of them simply looked at each other. One, a symbol of a system clinging to old rules, the other a woman refusing to be sidelined any longer. Then, footsteps echoed down the hallway outside, the confident sound of leather shoes on carpet. Vivian turned her head slightly as the door opened. In walked Richard Langford, the CEO of Highland Crest Bank. Tall, sharp-eyed, and radiating authority, he carried the weight of the entire institution. Behind him, two board members followed silently. Richard's gaze immediately found Vivian. A warm, genuine smile spread across his face. "Vivian Carter," he said, stepping forward with open arms. "I never expected to see you here." Vivian rose, returning the smile with quiet confidence. "Good to see you, Richard." Marcus's face drained of color. He glanced between the two, unsure how to respond. Richard ignored him, focusing entirely on Vivian. "You're still running Carter Strategies, right?" Richard asked. "Yes," Vivian replied, "and here to discuss a loan for a new project." Richard's expression shifted. The warmth faded, replaced by sharp focus. He turned his gaze to Marcus, his voice firm. "Marcus, exactly how long was Miss Carter kept waiting?" Marcus swallowed hard, beads of sweat forming on his brow. "Over an hour and a half, sir." Richard's eyes narrowed. "I see. That is unacceptable." Vivian watched as the CEO's presence filled the room, shifting the balance of power. Marcus looked smaller, his excuses evaporating in the face of this undeniable truth. Richard sat down across from Marcus, folding his hands on the desk. "We need to review what happened here. This kind of treatment cannot continue." Vivian felt a wave of relief, but she stayed alert. She knew one apology wouldn't erase the damage, but this was a start, a crack in the wall of polite exclusion. Richard turned to Vivian. "I want to hear your full account, from beginning to end. We must understand where the system failed you." For the next several minutes, Vivian recounted every moment, from the cold welcome at reception to the long wait while others were fast-tracked. Richard and the board members listened without interruption, absorbing the reality she laid bare. The weight of the story filled the room. The cold smiles, the quiet barriers, the rules bent for some and rigidly enforced against others. Richard's jaw tightened. "This will be addressed immediately," he promised. "Marcus, you are suspended pending an investigation. We will audit our client reception process and ensure fairness at every level." Marcus lowered his head, the power he once wielded slipping away. Vivian sat back, exhausted but victorious. The fight was far from over, but today she had made a difference. She had shown that silence and invisibility could be challenged. As the meeting ended, Vivian knew the road ahead would be long, but she also knew that standing up had already shifted something. Highland Crest Bank would never be the same. Outside, the Texas sun still blazed, but inside this room, a quiet storm had passed. It was the moment when real change began. The room was quiet after Marcus left, the weight of what had just happened settling over everyone. Richard Langford sat back in his chair, rubbing his hands together thoughtfully. He looked at Vivian with a new respect, one that went beyond business. This was about more than just a loan or a meeting. It was about fairness and dignity. "I want to personally apologize," Richard said, his voice steady but sincere. "What happened to you at our Houston branch is unacceptable. You should never have been made to wait like that, especially when you had a scheduled appointment." Vivian nodded, her expression calm but firm. "Thank you, but I'm not the only one who has been treated this way. There are many others who face these barriers every day. An apology is a start, but real change is what's needed." Richard leaned forward. "I agree. That's why we're launching a full review of our client reception process. Every branch will be examined. We'll retrain staff, update our policies, and make sure no one else has to go through what you did." The two board members nodded in agreement, their faces serious. Vivian could see that this wasn't just talk. There was a real commitment here. She took a deep breath. "I want to make one thing clear. I'm not here for special treatment. I'm here because I deserve the same respect any client should receive. That includes you and everyone else in this room." Richard's eyes met hers. "And you will have it. We will do better." For the first time all morning, Vivian felt a lightness in her chest. Not because the loan was approved, though that was important, but because her voice had been heard, not just by one person, but by those with the power to make a difference. As the meeting wrapped up, Richard promised to personally keep her updated. Vivian stood, shook hands with the board members, and prepared to leave the room. On her way out, she passed Melissa Stone at the reception desk. Their eyes met for a brief moment. Vivian held her gaze, not with anger but with quiet strength. Melissa's expression flickered with something unreadable, then quickly returned to its usual polite mask. Walking through the bank's automatic doors, Vivian stepped back into the bright Houston sunlight. The city was alive, bustling with people going about their day. But for Vivian, the world felt different now. She pulled out her phone and saw a new email. Her loan application had been approved. A small victory, but one that carried the weight of all the struggles she had faced. As she walked down the sidewalk, Vivian thought about the countless others who still faced invisible barriers. Her fight wasn't over. But today, she had taken a stand. A stand that would inspire others to do the same. Thank you for watching. If Vivian's story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe.